Welcome in. This is Hype Factor, a fantasy critic podcast for all the fantasy critic enthusiasts out there who just can't get enough talking about fantasy critic. I am one of your co-hosts, John, aka John32. I am joined by my good friend Marcus. Marcus, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. Things have been feeling lighter. The sun is shining brighter. The flowers smell sweeter. And ever since Donkey Kong Bonanza came out, I'm riding a high.
I thought it was summer that was doing that for you. No, it was Donkey Kong, eh?
No, just
Yeah.
Donkey Kong, yeah.
Yes, Donkey Kong has been epic. I am very early on in that game, and I can see why they scored it the way they did. It's hitting the spot, and I think it did for a lot of people. So
I still
um,
I'm a full confession. I still have not watched the trailer. I've been all
you
I'm
gotta
doing is
go and look at
reaping
this
the
thing.
fantasy critic rewards. Yeah,
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 completely shifting like the
yeah.
platformer genre a little bit and doing some really interesting stuff. So it's been fun. It's like a rage room. I've been comparing it to a rage room.
Okay,
Get all that
yeah.
aggression out as you platform around as a
There you
giant
go.
gorilla. So quickly, before we get into today's episode, I just wanted to give a quick callback to our last episode, in episode 9, where we talked to Kyle Stevenson from PS Trophy Room. It was a great episode. We really enjoyed talking with him. I just want to say thank you again to Kyle. That was great. And I thought there were a lot of amazing insights just into like all the experiences from Summer Game Fest. So if you haven't listened to that, maybe give it a listen. And today on episode 10, we're going to be doing a deep dive into yet another publisher, and that is 2K. So they've got some games on their horizon, and we're going to be chatting about that particular publishing house and what people might need to be thinking about when drafting games or picking up games from 2K. But before we do that, I thought this would be a good time after the whole DK bonanza that was this month to just do a quick check-in on our fantasy teams. Marcus, you want to kick us off? You want to tell us how your fantasy teams are doing right about this point?
Well, I'm doing okay. I'm quite happy overall with where I'm at, but I'm in. As I think folks know at this point, I'm in 4 different leagues. I actually am sitting in first place in each one of those leagues, John. But
Wow.
in two of those 4, I'm just by a thread, and I suspect I will. It's going to be a tight race to the end, and I suspect I have a good chance of being overtaken in both of them. So we shall see. I'm in first place right now. It's better than not being in first place, I suppose. But we're kind of hanging on. The other 2 leagues, I'm pretty confident I'll probably hang on in both of those.
Are there any juncture game releases, things that are upcoming that are kind of driving where you think things are going to net out by the end of the year?
Yeah, so maybe we'll focus on the 2 leagues that I'm a little concerned that I might be overtaken.
Yeah.
Just pulling it up here. So I've got, in the one league, I've got still to come out Shinobi, which is coming out next month. And I've got Keeper. And then I've got it still an empty spot. This is a very deep league that I'm in. I think I've mentioned this before. So there isn't a ton out there available. So I'm sitting on, how much money do I have? I think I have a fair amount of budget left to go. So I have the opportunity, well, $40 budget. Not as much as I thought actually I had. But
Could make a big move if you needed to.
I could make a big move, if something gets announced, an indie, kind of like a late minute indie that could come out. So I'm not in terrible shape with Shinobi and Keeper to still come. But my biggest competition, they picked up Consume Me. They picked up Luminous Arise. They're only a few points behind me at the moment. They've also got a few indies that I'm not really that familiar with. The Mermaid Mask, which I don't know anything about. Grime 2. I did know Grime 1. I think it reviewed quite well, like low 80s at least. And they're also sitting, I think, with hopes of unannounced mainline 3D Mario still to come out. I think that.
Well, he might be in an okay spot then.
Yeah.
I personally don't think that's coming.
Yeah. So, and then their counterpick is Judas, so I think they're probably pretty safe there. Mine is Hell Is Us. So I'm still not convinced that that game's going to like light the world on fire, but it has gotten, I'm thinking specifically of Kind of Funny. Greg Miller has been talking up this game. He's quite high on it. He's played a preview of it. But yeah, I'm still skeptical that it will score particularly high. So
yeah, it's not going to make you any points. You're losing points there, but it's just a question about how many, right?
how many? Yeah. Is
Yeah.
it mine? Is it? Do I lose 2 points or do I lose 10? That sort of thing. So
yeah, that's
yeah.
great.
So
Good.
that's the
Controller
one.
leagues first. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one league. And let me just take a quick peek at my other league. Our mutual friend Sean Capri is the one that is in a good shape in our carpool league that we're all a part of.
Yeah.
In our conference. Let me just pull it up. So Sean is sitting pretty good. I'm up by like half
Some
a
big
point on
moves.
him at the moment, but I still have Luminous, Shinobi, Chained Echoes, and my counter pick is Little Nightmares 3.
So that could go
So
either way now that it has a date. Yeah.
those are all decent, but Sean still has Marvel Cosmic Invasion, Outer Worlds 2, Hell Is Us, and counterpicking Tales of the Shire, which is a solid counterpick, I suspect.
I didn't realize that. I got to go back and look. I got to go back and look what's going on. So that for those that don't know, that's our conference league that Marcus and I
Yeah,
are actually competing, but we're in different
yep,
conferences within that
yep.
single pool. And I'm in League A, Marcus is in League B. But now so for myself, I was going to give an update on League A.
Okay.
I thought I was doing pretty well there. I thought I could probably like pull a corner, maybe win it all. Tony Hawk scored, and we're going to talk about that today. Scored slightly lower than I was expecting. I thought a few more points, and I would have been feeling a lot more confident. Now there's a couple more question marks. There's still 3 games come on my end as well, including Gears of War Reloaded and a couple others, including like the DLC for Indiana Jones. So feeling pretty good that I'm like good in League A. Probably I don't know about the conference overall, but yeah, definitely waiting to see what some of those games release, and then we'll see where we. That's a perfect one that we actually go head to head at the end here, Marcus.
That's
So
right.
that'll be
That's
good.
right. Yeah.
Um, and then in my other league, funny enough, I've been able to catch up a bit. I'm in second. I've been able to catch up a bit thanks to Donkey Kong. Those points really put me in, let's call it striking distance, but I'm still a bit of a ways back. The person in first still has Luminous Arise to come out and a few other games, big names. But he also has counterpicked Mafia,
Okay.
the old country. So so I'm rooting for that game to do as well as possible.
Yep.
And then I just have a few that I need to wait to see, including Silksong. So that league is very dependent on Mafia scoring well and Silksong releasing this year, and then I may have a shot to overtake that first spot. Otherwise, second seems decent.
Yep.
So anyway,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah, all the things that start taking form. Like this is really where things start to crystallize. You kind of know what you're watching for. There's not as many moves to make towards the back half of the year, maybe a couple. And yeah, just got to be ready. Just got to be ready. If Silksong does get a pushed out release date, though, then I'll be ready to strike to replace it with something as necessary. But for now, I'm holding out at least until you know October at
Yep.
this point.
Well, I'm looking. Just to go back to the carpool league. I hadn't looked at the kind of the overall standings in a little while. So you're sitting at number one, the top spot
Oh, yeah.
overall out of
Yeah, I thought
30.
I thought I was running away with it, but now I got to go reevaluate. I was in a
Out
good
of
spot. Now I thought,
yeah,
I need
30 managers though. That's pretty good, John. And then I'm in third so far, but like I said, I think there's a decent chance I get overtaken.
lots of
Yeah,
game left in that league. Lots
yeah,
of people with actually really full. I've really appreciated lots of people with very full teams, very competitive in all the conferences. So that's been great to see. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's been an update on where we are and what we've been thinking about. Without further ado, let's get into our monthly topic.
Topic of the month.
So as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about 2K publishing and, maybe a bit of a description to start us off. So 2K is a video game publishing label owned by Take-Two Interactive. And for those that are familiar with their products, they publish a wide variety of games across different platforms and genres for that matter. Many people are familiar with them specifically around their sports franchises, specifically NBA 2K, WE 2K. We're going to be talking about some of those. And then, sports franchises are interesting when we talk about Fantasy Critic because many leagues, at least the ones that I'm part of, really don't allow annual installments. And we're going to chat a little bit about that. But for those that do allow it, these are very relevant, I think, things that people are monitoring, game titles and everything that people are monitoring on a yearly basis. Probably more broadly, 2K is also known for IP series like Borderlands, Mafia, and Civilization, all kind of having an impact on this year's Fantasy Critic season. And with a new Mafia game coming out this month, which we just talked about, I'm very cheering that game on. And also Borderlands 4 on the long-term horizon. We thought this would be the right time to explore 2K's impact on Fantasy Critic, and if that publishing house provides any sort of, if we can provide any sort of strategic insights for the year. So, Marcus, maybe I'll turn it over to you. I know you've done a little bit of homework here in terms of breaking down 2K's list of games, and I'll just turn it over to you real quick.
Yeah, I figured I would start off by probably doing a little bit of an approach similar to what we did for Annapurna when we looked at the Annapurna games. But then I quickly kind of figured out that, there are a lot more games that 2K has been involved with, published, developed over, the last 2 decades, really, since they've been a publishing company. So I thought maybe it would be a little bit better to break things down, maybe look at things a little bit more recently, because there has been a lot of change in terms of the studios that they've worked with over those last literally 2 decades. So they have a much more kind of smaller stable of studios that they tend to work with right now. And they focus on a handful of franchises that have at least released games, I want to say in the last 5 or 6 years or so. And I wanted to take a look and see how those games are scoring. And I think, like, John, the overall impression that I got is that there's a lot of games that do okay, but not really all that spectacular. And it kind of honestly made me a little, I don't own them on any team, as we've kind of gone through already, but I would be a little more worried after doing this for both Mafia and Borderlands 4, at least as potentially scoring kind of that mid 80s sort of game, which I think people that have it on their team are really hoping for, because they just don't, the games that we're getting a lot of mid 70s sorts of scoring games across almost all of their franchises. And we can kind of get down into a deeper breakdown of each of the IP as we get through this discussion here. But like, it's a lot of mid 70s stuff here.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that we avoided, something like Borderlands 4, both of us, and this kind of gave me a little bit more confidence. I think 2K is very profitable. It was be the word. Like, I think they're commercially successful.
Right.
But in terms of critic success, it's been a bit of a mixed story, and it's not one that I think it's worth the kind of the fantasy critic weight that some people have been placing it on it. So yeah, why don't we go ahead and like talk through some of these?
Sure. Well, where do we want to start? Well, let's start with maybe the franchises that we do have games that are coming out, on the near horizon. So let's start with Borderlands, John. So, I think like maybe a consistent theme that I saw with a lot of these franchises is the games that were earlier in the franchises are the ones that tended to score better. And we do see a bit of a downward trend. So like, if you look at the original Borderlands, they didn't have an open critic score, but it scored 84 on Metacritic. Borderlands 2 was an 86. Then the pre-sequel, which is kind of, I guess, more of a spin-off game rather than the main line, 74. There was a Legendary Collection. That was an 84, so that's pretty good. Borderlands 3, which is actually fairly maligned, I think, scored an 81, so not too bad. Tiny Tina's Wonderland, 78. New Tales from the Borderlands, which is more like the Telltale style game, but it was developed by Gearbox. It's only a 68. Not exactly in the same style as these mainline Borderlands games, but it feels like there is a bit of a downward trend here, and I would not be surprised at all to see Borderlands 4, especially with a lot of the controversy. I think there is a bit of a negativity around in that zeitgeist about this game. Like people don't like Randy Pitchford, I think in general, and are ready to kind of stick it to him almost regardless of the game. And I think like, I don't know, I could see that bleeding into reviews a little bit. And I could see this game sitting in the mid to high 70s, when all is said and done.
Yeah, it's hard to judge. Like, I think the game's showing okay, but yeah, just the story. They're right. Like, if you start charting these things on a graph, it's not going up, and that's always a little concerning when you're talking about Fantasy Critic, and also a bit surprising when you're talking about like, for me, usually you're using previous entries in a series as kind of a benchmark, uh, and you kind of expect things to do better. We saw that kind of trend line a little bit this year with like things like Citizen Sleeper, things like Death Stranding. Like their sequels have kind of outdone their original, and you kind of hope for that. And I don't know if I have that same kind of level of confidence when we're talking about a sequel like Borderlands 4, or any 2K sequel, unfortunately. So yeah, it's something to keep an eye out for sure. Sometimes it can be a bit around the genre as well. Like we haven't talked about, like there's a lot of different genres that they're putting out, which is not easy to do. The looter shooter kind of genre, I guess, is like one of those things that it's tough to nail, I would suggest, with regards to critics, because everybody's going in with their own kind of preconceived notions. So yeah, not an easy one, but I think it would be easy to kind of like provide that out saying it's the genre, but we see this trend kind of in other series as well. So I don't know if you want to talk about some of the other ones that we have here on the list as well.
Well, why don't we go next to Mafia? So, like the original Mafia game predated review scores that I was able to find. But we have a Mafia 2 Metacritic score of 74. And this one, I think, like at least in the circles that I'm in, it's thought of pretty favorably, Mafia 2. But 74 Metacritic, again, not a terrible game by any means, but not scoring super high. Mafia 3 was, I think, pretty well panned. People liked the story of that game. Thought the gameplay kind of got very repetitive and got in the way, and it is at a 66. And then they've released definitive editions of all three of the games. So the Mafia 2 Definitive Edition, way down at 64. Definitive edition of the first game is actually the highest scoring game that we have, is at 78. And then Mafia 3 Definitive Edition is at 63. So Mafia games, this was like maybe the biggest surprise out of all of this for me. I knew that 3 was probably not a lot of people's cup of tea, but I didn't think it was even in the mid to low 60s. And so Mafia scoring much lower than I was expecting. That worries me because I think Mafia, the old country, looks really cool.
It does, yeah. And I think it's slightly like, this is the thing, like, I don't know. Again, maybe it's like the heart overhead thing. Like we want this one to be good, not just personally because I want it to score well, but also because I want to play it. It does look cool. It looks like a cool story. It obviously has the Godfather feel, and I want to engage with that. And people have been saying, I think that it's more linear, if I'm not mistaken. Like it is a more confined story, which maybe helps it. So that might help break it out of whatever this trend line it is. But again, if you chart these numbers, there's a line here. Like I don't have to be a statistician to see that this line is going downward, and that's always just going to like probably hamper your ceiling. It could be scary for your floor. So yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. It is a bit eye-opening when you start charting these things out like this over time. And like Mafia 3 Definitive Edition was 2021. Like this is not, ancient history. This is just a few years ago now. So
yeah. Is there any other IP or franchises that you wanted to dig into that kind of like stick out to you, John?
Well, I mean, it kind of follows the same trend line a little bit, but we can go into like they've also published XCOM, as my understanding. That's another, I think, there's a few big like IPs that they've obviously published, but XCOM to me is one where I was surprised by the numbers in terms of its kind of declining piece here. So you have XCOM Enemy Unknown from 2012 sitting at an 89 on Metacritic, which is very high. And that's kind of where I thought these games were. The next one up in 2013 was XCOM Enemy Within, 86. Then XCOM 2 in 2016 at an 87. And then, the last two here, XCOM Chimera Squad in April 2020 at a 78, and then XCOM 2 Collection at a 75. So like again, these are in my mind, and I don't play XCOM games, so maybe that's my own ignorance. But I would have thought that the pedigree of the IP would have like carried it forward. But this is another very clear trend line going down over time, which for sequels and follow up entries is like super concerning. So I don't know. I don't know if that was surprising to you as well, Marcus.
A little bit, but I don't know. I think like the last mainline XCOM game, XCOM 2 scored an 87. If they came out with a full mainline XCOM 3, I think that one would maybe not 87, but that one might have an 85, 84 kind of like probably you're probably not looking at 70s for that game, despite the fact that, an XCOM 2 collection was a 75, and that's the most recent kind of XCOM thing that's come out. So I think that if we had a new XCOM mainline game, I think you're probably pretty safe with that franchise. And that might be, honestly, of all of these franchises, even the ones that we've yet to talk about, maybe BioShock. If we had another BioShock game, we might be looking at a pretty kind of mid 80s, good chance for a floor kind of thing. But XCOM, I think, is at least poised out of all these franchises to probably score the best, in my opinion.
So would you actually take an XCOM in a fantasy draft if you knew it
It
was
would
coming?
depend on how certain the release date was.
Okay.
I think that for me, if it's just a nebulous 2026 date and it was previewed at this coming Game Awards, and it said 2026 or just fall, even winter fall 2026, that probably wouldn't be enough for me to take it. But if it said it's dated March 15th, 2026, yeah, I would probably consider it.
Yeah, because honestly,
Yeah.
I think this may have changed the way I'm thinking about certain things. Like you mentioned BioShock. We can talk about that quickly. Obviously, I don't know if you want to go through it, but like, the original BioShock had a 96 on Metacritic. By the time BioShock Infinite came out in 2013, that scored a 94 on Metacritic. But the BioShock collection, most recently released in 2020, was down to an 84. I agree, like these numbers are different, but if you isolate these, this is kind of to me the outlier here, right? And like, what are the chances of another BioShock game, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
I see this as a bit of an outlier in the trend that we're seeing with some of these 2K games.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I would agree. I think like the BioShock thing is maybe a bit of a unique situation, or maybe I'm just looking at it a little bit differently. I think like Ken Levine was so integral into the original BioShock, and maybe his influence in the subsequent games, because he wasn't involved in BioShock 2. I mean, I can't remember if he was involved. Listeners might be like they're yelling at their at their the podcast or whatever, but I don't know if he was involved in Infinite or not. But his influence and kind of like his aura may have been, his legacy was still ingrained in those games. That was 2013 was the last mainline BioShock game that came out. So like we're in 2025 right now. There had been one rumored for I think a little while. The next BioShock game that comes out is probably, probably at least 3-4 years away at earliest. All of that legacy that, from the, I don't know that you're getting any of the goodwill that those previous BioShock games had. It might be like kind of like a Perfect Dark situation, that which we'll probably talk about a little bit later. But yeah, like I don't know, it's tough to say. I think that BioShock, there'll be a lot of hype for it, but I think there'll also be a lot of expectation, and it's kind of like if that doesn't hit that bar, people I think would be maybe more disappointed than if it didn't come with that BioShock name.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This has definitely kind of opened my eyes around some of this stuff that I hadn't thought about, right? And
Yeah.
Civ is one of those other ones where we saw the drop off this year, we felt it, and so I'll be very curious at the end of this year once Mafia and then Borderlands comes out, just to see at least for these non-sports titles, what the story of 2K was this year. I think that's will be a really interesting like wrap up narrative just to see like did they just continue the trend. I'm going to guess yes, but I guess we'll wait to see if that's the case. Would you want to talk quickly about their sports franchises? I know that there's a lot of leagues that don't have like the sports annual installations that are eligible, but there are some. And I think, speaking of outliers, I think this does kind of buck the trend a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I think it is worth talking about the sports franchises, even though most leagues probably don't allow them. They really have three kind of sports or sports adjacent franchises that they publish. They have the PGA Tour 2K games, which they do every other year, which probably helps them. The most recent one came out this winter in February and scored an 81, so actually not too bad, which is a little bit higher than their previous two entries. They also have the WWE 2K franchises, and those are pretty consistently kind of like high 70s, low 80s. The most recent one also came out this year, scored an 80. And then there is the big one, or at least the one that is probably most well known and sells, I'm sure, the most copies, is NBA 2K, and that franchise actually is much more mediocre, at least scoring wise, fantasy critic scoring wise. Looking at high 60s, the best one reviewing in the last 5 years was 2K23 at a 78. But we have a couple of 68s, 75, 76. So like pretty.
It bounces around.
Yeah. I would definitely, if sports games were not or were allowed in a league that I played in, I would not be drafting or not be adding NBA 2K, but I might consider. Of those, I probably would look to WWE 2K first, because they've been consistent, 81, 80, 80 for their last 3 years they've released. And the PGA Tour, maybe. The last one was in 81, but the previous were 77 and 75. So
I will say they're introducing, or maybe it's already happened. Maybe this isn't from the March, but I guess it didn't affect it. Like if it came out in March and they had some weird social island like element that was meant to character stuff where you're doing social things, and I think it was like weirdly received by the people that like those games because I don't know if it was super popular, but it doesn't seem to have affected the score, so I don't know. Not too bad, not too bad. I will say, like, just looking at the because as we were kind of like thinking through this, one of the things I was looking at when thinking about 2K, I did read that a lot of their history around like loot boxes and stuff like that has potentially colored the way that reviewers look at some of their titles. So the ones that may incorporate some of those elements that could have some like negatives. So you kind of have to consider, again, going back to genre, like what kind of game are you talking about? What kind of financial monetization tactics are they using that could sway how people are thinking about those titles, especially depending on who's reviewing them. From what I also understand with regards to the sports games, a lot of times like outlets may have to shop that out. They may not have like sports reviewers, so I don't know if there's like a niche genre of people that are doing the sports reviews, which just maybe requires its own episode one day, Marcus. Just like looking at that whole review category. So anyway, those are some of the like the big thoughts I had. I don't know if there are any closing thoughts that you had on 2K as a publishing house.
Not really. I mean, I think like basically just what I said before. I mean, I think that looking into these games and these franchises, which are well-known, established franchises that have been around for years, I was kind of underwhelmed with how they performed from a fantasy critic perspective. So I think that that'll definitely be in the back of my mind as future installments of these franchises kind of come out. And I will be really curious to see how Mafia and Borderlands 4 perform in the next couple of months.
Well, never drafting Civ again, so they can
That's right.
Get on that.
I'm out on Civ now. That's right.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing all that, Marcus. That was great. And why don't we see what's been happening in the news this month?
Let's get into the news.
So kicking us off, we just recently had a Pokemon Presents. You would have thought that maybe there'd be something very big and exciting given the Nintendo Switch 2 recently released. And there was not. Very little by way of game information. I think we got the date, release date for Pokemon Legends ZA. Yes, ZA.
That's right.
And thank you. And it's out on October 16th. So that's good. I mean, at least there's a date for that. It is showing really well. Again, Arceus did pretty well. This is showing pretty well. The juice of the Switch 2 could really help it. The power of the Switch 2 has already improved Scarlet and Violet and other Switch games, Pokemon games as well, that were struggling previously just without too much optimization. It's just doing it. So hopefully that bodes well for those that do have Pokemon Legends ZA on their teams. We also got just today, July 24th, Battlefield 6 reveal trailer, which looked pretty cool, actually.
Okay, you watched it. Good. I'm glad at least one of us watched it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, number 4 and 5, so Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 5, they both scored, I think, 79. We don't yet have a release date. They did signal that on July 31st, so probably around the time this episode's airing, there's going to be a multiplayer reveal. So another trailer highlighting the multiplayer. So, I mean, the fact that they're doing 2 reveals in short succession is interesting. And those astute fantasy critic players may have noticed that the Fantasy Critic website also tagged that there's rumors pointing to a possible October 10th release date. So there's still just rumors at this time, but that'll be interesting. I think with both 4 and 5 scoring 79 in this game, looking kind of cool and potentially filling a bit of a void, especially as a late release, late summer release window, and then into October, that could be interesting for some people out there. Hoping to cash in. I don't know.
It
Thoughts,
could be.
Marcus?
It could be interesting to some people. Not me though. Not me.
No.
I think I don't know. I guess if you're really looking forward to it and you like having teams that full of games that you really enjoy, it has the potential to do okay. I don't think it's worth the risk. I think you probably, even at this point, have better options out there, which we'll touch on probably as we go on in the show. It's just that, I am Mr. Anti-multiplayer for fantasy critic purposes anyway. So
Yeah.
it's just so tough for these games.
And our teams are pretty locked. I mean, there's not that much room for flexibility. I will say that people that are hanging on to games with no release dates will be needing potentially to make moves, and it might be slim pickings come the end of the, towards the fall, towards the end of the season. So at least having some options out there that could get you some points might be better than taking bigger risks. But yeah, anyway, that was interesting to watch. Inazuma 11 Victory Road was delayed from August to November. So I put this in here because there's a lot of chatter in the Fantasy Critic Discord about this one, mostly because it's the same developer, it's level 5, and so lots of questioning if this is the same developer as Professor Layton game. Marcus, which we still don't have a release date for. So there's a lot of speculation around whether this game being delayed from August to November, and that kind of taking up the air and oxygen of the winter or fall release, then pushes Layton out into 2026. And I think that's not a bad way of looking at this. I'd be a little bit nervous as well, seeing potential implications. Another delay, this one maybe less costly for some, was the Terminator 2 2D game that we saw earlier this year, which looked really cool. It was pushed out from early September to October 31st. It's still looking good. Hopefully this is just more time for polish. I think that's what people are thinking. I actually think this probably bodes well for those that have chosen to put it on their team.
Yeah, I agree. I think that a delay of, a month and a half or so, that's probably a really good thing for fantasy critic purposes. That's what you want to see, I think.
Yeah. As long as it's not out to 2026.
Exactly. As long as that month and a half doesn't push you into the next year. But that will probably add, we never know kind of the alternate universe where it did release in early September, what those scores would have been. But I have to imagine that that's going to add some points to the final score, right?
For sure. Building on some negative news from earlier that we heard about, everybody's heard by now, all of the layoffs that occurred from Microsoft, and obviously number of developer jobs impacted. This also led to the cancellation of a couple titles, Everwild and Perfect Dark, 2 games which I think people were waiting on. I don't think anybody was expecting them out this year, so not super Fantasy Critic relevant, but also not something to look at for next year. This is, it's just negative. I think it would be remiss if we didn't comment on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's too bad. I'm particularly personally bummed for the Perfect Dark game. I think it looked quite good when it showed. I guess it was last summer at the Xbox showcase, and that was probably one of my more anticipated Xbox first party games. So I was bummed to see this, but yeah, strike these ones off your draft list for next year. So
unfortunate. We also heard that Directive 8020, Supermassive game, delayed to 2026. Did you want to talk about this one, Marcus?
There's not too much to say. I think it's a game that I don't remember where it was showed. It was first showed earlier this year, I want to say, and people were, I think, pretty positive about it. I know that it definitely. I should have the percent ownership in front of me, but it's not a game that wasn't on anybody's roster. So if you do have it and you have the opportunity to drop it, you should go and do that right now.
Similarly, 2KXO release date was, I guess, in Fantasy Critic in the system changed from 2025 or planned 2025 to be announced, so the TBA, plus planned for early access, which I think is even more concerning. So yeah, I think this is one, we were chatting about this earlier. It is one that I think was on high on the fantasy draft list back in December, January of this year. But I guess now, if it's going into early access, so many leagues that I'm a part of don't allow those scores to count towards the total total output. So that's not good news, I guess. I don't know your thoughts on this one, Marcus.
Well, I mean, just going from a 2025, which already is like uncertain enough as we're approaching August here in 2025, to a TBA, that alone, the date shift alone, that's never a good sign for it to still come out this year and have a full score that counts. Like on a, I know, like I think it's got quite a high hype factor. Like I don't really know that much about this game. I know it's a fighting game. I know it's got some characters from like the League of Legends. I don't know if it's all League of Legends characters or not, but I don't know much about it beyond that. But I know people are excited about it, and it was on or is on a lot of people's rosters. I think that if you do have it, probably consider swapping it out if you have the opportunity to do so.
And then last on kind of our news list here, Dragon Quest VII remake possibly next year. Is this confirmed?
I've heard it talked about on another podcast. I was scrolling through news on. I found it on Eurogamer, so I don't know if it was 100% confirmed or still kind of in the rumor stages. But, yeah, I love Dragon Quest. That's why I added it to the show. This is one of the Dragon Quest games that I have never played. I had. So this came out as Dragon Warrior here in the West. This is the last Dragon Warrior game, and I had considered many times about purchasing it because it came out on PlayStation 1 and picking it up and giving it a go, but I could never quite bring myself to the price tag. It's not the most expensive PlayStation 1 game, but probably about $100 or something. And I was just like, I don't know about that. So hearing that there's a remake, I was like, okay, this is now my opportunity. And I suspect they're remaking a lot of Dragon Quest games lately, right? We just had the HC2D remake of 3 last year. We've got 1 and 2 coming out.
2 coming
this year. 3 performed pretty good. I think it was 83, 84-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood. I suspect 1 and 2 will probably be in that low 80s range. So I don't think that... I think that Dragon Quest VII, if it gets confirmed, when next year comes around, it should probably be on people's radars.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to getting into the weeds of 2026.
Yeah.
There's so much that's affected, what's to come next year.
Yeah, a lot of this news now, is so little of it ends up being relevant for still this year, right? Because we're kind of getting towards the latter half of we're in the latter half of the year, and there's just news that comes out, doesn't really affect this year so much anymore.
Okay, so for rumors, I'm going to start with one. Early on tonight, we talked about our Fantasy Critic updates. So one thing I did not mention about the league where I'm in second, where I'm trying to play catch up and I'm relying on Silksong, etc., is that I counterpicked Crimson Desert. So this is why this particular rumor is important to me, because it's showing very well. The game had score. I think its original or its other versions of this game, previous iterations, kind of were mixed. This is a very different iteration of the IP from what I can tell. It's much bigger, it's much more grand. It kind of apparently is very complex. There were a lot of previews that were, I think, in June, maybe part of Summer Games Fest, I can't remember, but lots of people saying that it was a very interesting, dynamic type of gameplay, very hard, but also like very rewarding because it's very intricate. So maybe it'll be so hard that people won't review it well. But anyway, it looks very cool. But the problem for me is that there was a Korean news outlet that apparently leaked a November 2nd release date for this game. So even though that's not confirmed, I put that out there. I hope it doesn't come out because it will negatively affect me. But that's out there. So please make that on your radar.
I feel like that we'd have to get some confirmation relatively soon if it's coming that.
I would think so. Gamescom or something. Something's got to happen relatively soon. And honestly, like it could still score really poorly. It's very much an enigma. I don't think so. I think it'll do the ominous thunder in my background. I think it'll do relatively okay. So it's going to cost me some points if it comes out, but that's why I'm banking on a delay.
Yeah.
The next one, Santa Monica Studio. So there was a lot of chatter in the last couple of weeks. The news is what it is. They're the studio behind the God of War series. There was a lot of chatter about them working on a new game, but apparently, allegedly, it's not going to be a new IP, but it might feel like one. Well, I wonder what that could be referring to, Marcus.
Yeah.
There's been plenty of speculation around what that studio might be working on next. I think specifically the game director Cory Barlog and what he's been working on next. He was responsible for the God of War reboot in 2018. But it was Bloomberg journalist Jason Schreier who kind of addressed the speculation on Reset Era, calling Barlog's next game, Sony Santa Monica's next big thing. And that, in his words, it's not a new IP, but it might feel like one. And again, this a lot of speculation is this is the 2.5D God of War, the side-scrolling God of War, which would be in a different context, a very different type of game. At least that's what people are thinking. There was a lot of like speculation around some sort of like sci-fi game, but I think this seems to me like pointing to that. I know others are coming to the same conclusion. I don't know if you had any other thoughts on this one, Marcus.
No, I hadn't really dug too deep into this. I had heard it tangentially on maybe other podcasts that I had been listening to, but it would make sense, I suppose, if it is the God of War. That kind of fits the it's not a new IP, but it might feel like one kind of quote. I'm in on whatever Cory Barlog decides to do next, though, and I think that like whatever he's attached to, I think you have to really pay attention in terms of Fantasy Critic.
The only thing that I wonder, though, is like the 2.5D kind of side-scrolling thing could also just be a side project for some other team. Like that might not even be what they're referring to, right? It could be some other.
I kind of hope not. When I heard, we talked about this on previous episodes, but like when I heard that the 2.5D Metroidvania God of War game, I was like, I don't know. Like I am, Metroidvania is probably like my favorite genre of game, but that's not what I want from God of War, and I don't know. I don't think that's not what I'm looking for. So
you've played Ragnarok, right, Marcus?
I have.
Ragnarok? Okay.
Yes.
So spoiler warning for everybody out there that hasn't beaten Ragnarok.
Yeah.
The other big kind of theory is that it is just an Atreus spin-off, not spin-off, but like next entry into the series, which would feel and play very differently, potentially in a new quote-unquote realm, which would make a lot of sense, and it would feel and obviously have very different theming and everything else, but still fit within that kind of world of what they've built. So that's the other kind of contemplative option, I guess. Yeah. So I like that story. I'd like when there's a little bit of little bit of buzz, a little bit of speculation.
I kind of let me say it, John. I'm going to say it right now. I would prefer if it was a new IP. Let's just.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I would prefer if it was a new IP. I think I've had enough. I really do. I even like the original God of War. I may like the original God of Wars a little bit more. Maybe that's not true, but I do like the original God of Wars for a different reason than the new ones. And but I think I've had enough God of War. I would be all for a new IP, but it doesn't sound like that's what's happening. So yeah.
Well, we're talking about Santa Monica and we're talking about 2026 a little bit. Wasn't there also a rumor that they were supposed to be remaking the original ones? Wasn't that
Yes.
also on the docket at some point?
Well, I don't know. Was Santa Monica attached to that or
Well,
not? I
don't
don't
know, but I
remember.
know
Yeah.
there's some talk about a
Yeah.
remake of the
Definitely.
originals,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In kind of a
Yeah.
more modern fashion. That could also be something that's floating out there.
It could be. Yep.
This is kind of an interesting one that I just saw today. I think it was on the Gaming Leaks and Rumors around Reddit. Fable potentially could be delayed out of 2026. Now, it's only according to I think a recent episode of the Xbox Era podcast, they were talking about, and they were suggesting that there may be some indications that a delay out of 2026 is not out of the question. So that's very speculative. I don't want to contribute to the ongoing, drama out there with regards to Xbox and a potential Fable delay. But it's interesting that people are actually talking like that's a possibility. That's scary. Fable was one of those things that was supposed to be like a lock for our 2026 draft, something I was excited to play, and then hearing something like this, I'm like, oof,
Yeah.
just
If there's anything to that does not bode well. Like they were banking on it coming out this year, and so for it to potentially not come out, it feels like that speaks to bigger issues with the game rather than just requiring more polish, right? I don't know. That would worry me if it does slip beyond 2026.
People started speculating in different discords that I'm in that sounds like perfect dark to them, which is scary. But yeah, let's not burn everything down just yet. We'll see what happens. It's just a rumor.
Yep.
All right. So let's get into our hype check.
Hype check.
Okay, so we had a number of games that were released over the course of July. We'll run through some of these quickly where I don't think there's, not too much to break down. Mecha Break scored a 71. Everdeep Aurora scored a 76. This is an interesting one. We've been talking about sports games tonight. Here's one that kind of, it's done pretty well. EA Sports College Football 26 scored an 84. Anything on that one? I know that most, I don't know how those are treated, if those are treated as annual installations, because I know it's kind of just come back. So,
yeah, I mean, I think I'm trying to think of another sports franchise that I would have more faith in for next year if it was eligible than the college football.
College football one's doing very well.
Yeah. Because the first kind of installment of since coming back was last year, correct?
And I believe so, yeah.
Pretty sure that was in the 80s as well. Low 80s, but still in the 80s. So yeah, it's and I think it's novel enough that people are not fatigued with it. They still, even next year or at least in the near future, I think that it probably has a good chance to continue scoring well.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, Patapon 1 and 2 Replay, which I think we had talked about earlier this year as potentially an option, only landed at a 78. Not bad. Not bad for kind of an older game kind of coming forward. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 plus 4 landed at an 83. Now, I'm not going to lie, it's fine. 13 points is nothing to sneeze at, but it is lower than what I had hoped for. I had hyped this game up, and I thought maybe it could go a little bit more. I expected, I think, 86, maybe 87 would have been nice. So a little bit under where we kind of hoped it would land. Next up, Eric Scholm, The Stolen Dream, scored an 80. Next up, The Drifter scored an 86. So I looked up what this was because I was not familiar with The Drifter, scoring an 86. It is a point-and-click adventure game. Looked kind of cool. I think it's just on PC, if I'm not mistaken. If you haven't checked out The Drifter, it might be worth doing so. Fretless, The Wrath of Ripson. So we'll stop on this one for a second because this got a lot of notoriety. You've been paying attention to the Fantasy Critic pages. It's currently sitting, as we're recording this podcast, at a 79. But I believe the story here is that it started, I think, at 88. 88 or 89. It was quite high.
I think it was in the 90s. I think it was in the 90s,
it even
John.
In the 90s?
Yeah, it was at 91 or something. And
right, because it was scoring better than Clair Obscur for a minute there, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
And then it just kind of dropped. And I'm actually
it's
just
dropped off a lot.
Yeah, there it is. I just wanted to pull it up here and see. It's at 13 reviews at the moment.
Okay, so still very malleable based on like who's reviewing and the numbers while it getting kind of averaged out. It was only 0.9% published because I remember when it was at that high point, I'm like, who's picked this game up? But yeah, it's kind of come back down to earth a little bit. I think with only 13 reviews, it does have the potential to move both up and down. This can get back into the 80s, no problem, with only 13 reviews. But it's just I'm not familiar with it, but it's kind of was driving the story there for a minute.
Well, here I'll break that down. It has 13 overall reviews. It looks like only 6 top critic
Six
reviews.
with scores.
6 top critic reviews, and what dragged it down was a 4 out of 10 from Screen Rant.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
well, that's going to be hard to recover from. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's only 6 reviews. More. If we, I mean, that are counting towards the score, anyways, right? So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's still very, very early days then on that one, but it's been like a bit of a yo-yo.
Definitely.
Okay. Yeah. Next up, the story of the month: Donkey Kong Bonanza, coming in at 91. Flipped up to 92 for a quick second, but kind of landed and looks like it's staying at 91. So everything we hoped for and more.
That's right. Hashtag Year of Kong, right?
The Year of Kong, our big bets on this one. Glad to see it pay off because we did put a lot of our Fantasy Critic budgets into this game, and it was worth it. Because sometimes, the 91 is, it's not an easy thing to get games in the 90s. So, yeah, very much worth it. And congratulations to all those that that drafted this game somehow.
Yes, especially drafted it. Yep.
Yeah. Next up, Shadow Labyrinth is sitting currently at a 72. It's also been on a bit of a downward trend since it first opened up. I think it started in the high 70s and is now at 72. Misk, A Tiny Tale, sitting at an 85.
Yes.
All I can say is that our good friend Seth Sturgill put a video on this game, and once again, he has a knack for picking out indies that are going to be reviewed very well. So, good on him. I don't know what this game is. I don't know, Marcus, if you've had any.
Well, I happened to look at it because my other podcast is called Tiny Game Chronicles. So, yes. So I'm kind of like obligated to look into any game that has Tiny in the title, just to see if it's something we should be covering. And it's a 3D. It's a Tiny Tale that is a little bit too long for our show. Gotcha. I think it's about an 8 or 9 hour game or something like that. So, but it does look good. It's a 3D kind of puzzle platformer sort of thing. It looks great. But
very cool.
Yep.
Very cool. Wu Chang Fallen Feathers, that game which we've been very low on, is currently sitting at a 75. So kind of fitting in where we thought it might, which is just right in the middle of the 70s there as a
almost exactly where we were kind of what we were talking. We tried to convince my co-host and our friend Michael to get rid of it, and I think he kept it on his roster. So I think he was
he had faith. We did not.
No.
Yeah. Killing Floor 3 is currently sitting at 73. An interesting one. This one the next one up, only relevant maybe in some leagues. I haven't seen too many people talking about this, but Destiny 2: The Edge of Fate, so the DLC, is down to a 65. So another one where it kind of started slightly higher than that, and it's kind of dropped down now into the negative territory for Fantasy Critic. So again, Destiny kind of yo-yoing all over the place. I remember, the base game's getting great scores, and then some DLCs doing okay, and then now this one doing poorly. So I don't know. Destiny, it's a big question mark.
These Destiny 2, and I'm not in the Destiny kind of ecosystem and knowing kind of knowing the specifics of each of these DLC packs, but they are all over the place in terms of Fantasy Critic scores. Like a 65, I want to say, what was the big one that came out, I think, previous to this? Doesn't matter. They've had some that have scored kind of like in that almost 90 range, if not above 90. And so to kind of have that big of a range for DLC, it makes me never want to pick it because it's like too much variance for me.
People are looking to swing big with Destiny because you just don't know what you're gonna get. But I don't know. Oh, interesting. Maybe another game to round us out. The last game I want to talk to, I think the review scores just dropped this morning. Super Mario Party Jamboree, Nintendo Switch 2 plus Jamboree. So the Nintendo Switch 2 edition, scoring a 79. The base game was at an 81.
Okay.
This game coming in slightly lower. Overall, the impressions seem to be somewhat negative. I think this is tied to the fact that the DLC, or I don't even know if we would consider this DLC, but it has a cost associated with it. It's not a free upgrade, even with the Nintendo Switch online subscription. Even with the
Okay.
NSO subscription, you have to pay for this upgrade. And I think it's pretty substantial in terms of what you have to pay, and you need the equipment to really make good use of it and everything like that. So apparently it's not like rocking anyone's world. So 79, I think this is maybe one of the first kind of real disappointments of the Switch 2 life cycle. I think people are kind of hyped on what this might be, but I don't know. It doesn't look that great. I won't be getting it. So, and then, this is usually the time of the show where we do a bit of a look ahead and try and talk about some previews of, our top fantasy critic bids, looking at what's coming up that people might want to bid on. And honestly, we're kind of in a weird space in the season where I think our advice this time around is probably to hold. Maybe we'll go through what's out there right now, like what people are still bidding on as of this past Saturday, this past week when the bids were going through. There's a lot of the same. Silent Hill F, Keeper, Sword of the Sea, Mina the Hollower, Luminous Arise, and Indiana Jones DLC kind of continue to be up there, which is interesting because I would have thought these would have all been gone. So maybe these are more deeper leagues or with leagues where people are less engaged because, even Mina the Hollower is still getting 45 bids out there in a week where you had thought that would have been scooped up if it was available.
It's still blowing my mind, John, that the Hollower is available in that many leagues. If you happen to be listening to this podcast and it happens to be available in your league, you should be looking to add it in any way that you can. And frankly, the same with Luminous Arise. Like these are games that they're coming out this year. Luminous Arise, I don't think has a date, but it just says fall so far. So, but they're going to score well, and you're going to want these on your team. So if they happen to still be available, like they have been at least in 45 leagues across the site, add them, please. Do yourself a favor.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that the listeners of this podcast, it's not available.
Probably.
I'm pretty sure that those listening to us are not thinking that those games are currently available in their leagues. But, you never know. You never know. Maybe two other ones just to draw attention to, because I thought this was interesting and also kind of odd. So Hell Is Us, I know that this is one that you're a little concerned with it because you have it counterpicked. Had just this past Saturday, 28 bids for a total of $206. Does that make you nervous, Marcus? So what people are seeing in this game?
It makes me more nervous than I was when I counterpicked it, but I'm still, I don't know. This developer, again, not to throw shade, but this developer doesn't have like any track record of making games that review really well. So is Hell Is Us the breakout? Possibly, but I'm still a little skeptical. I think like part of it, we were talking a little offline about this. I think like, some of the bigger, podcasts and shows that are out there have a lot of influence on these types of transactions that happen in Fantasy Critic. And I know that Greg Miller, a very prominent voice in the industry, is quite high on Hell Is Us. So he's been talking up this game as one of his most anticipated of the year. And I suspect that is part of the reason we're seeing these trends come out, because we haven't seen a lot of, it's not like they've put out new material about Hell Is Us. It's more like people that are talking about it in these circles that I think drive a little bit of this hype and are kind of a direct cause of these transactions that we're seeing. So whether that reflects ultimately how this game scores, I'm not sure. But I think that's what's driving the popularity of it being picked up. as often as it is right now.
Kind of funny, just did their mid-year update, did they? Or they just did their fantasy
Something
pick
like
update
that. They did an
too.
update, kind of
So,
like a check-in. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I still need to listen, but it's that could be driving numbers as well, which is always great to see. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see if Greg was correct
Yeah.
in his estimations
He doesn't have a
on
great.
this
I
one.
mean, in their mid the spoiler for your when you listen to that podcast, he's not doing all that well this year. So
Okay. Well, maybe
he
you're
has
okay
done well in
then.
the past, but not this year.
Do you want to quickly? Do you want to talk about Dead Take? I'm not familiar with this, and it'll probably be too late by the time this airs. I think it has a July 31st release date, so coming out next week. It received 24 bids, and again, $207 spent just this past week. This is just reflective of the most recent Saturday. But it's an interesting one. I think this is like live action video type of horror game with a number
Yeah.
of big name actors in it. It wasn't on my radar. I don't know if it was on yours.
Not really. I think that it was announced relatively recently, and again, this was something that was talked about on Kind of Funny. I know that Blessing was quite high on this game, and yeah, you said big name actors, Ben Starr. I know there's a few other kind of names that you've probably heard of, but this is made by the developer that did the Metroidvania, very different than what this seems to be. Tales of Kenzara Zao, which only came out last year, so quick turnaround. And the head of the studio, Abu Bakar Salim, seems like a really nice dude. I hope he does well. But yeah, this is coming out July 31st, so by the time you're hearing this, it's probably a little too late. But yeah, it was the first thing that stood out because I didn't even recognize the name when we saw the this pop up in the list of games being added. I was like, oh, what's this? Oh, it's like, oh, yeah. That's the one that Blessing was talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And but honestly, I think a lot of the moves, again, likely those listening to this episode, a lot of the moves have been made. I don't know what kind of advice we could give. To me, I was just going through some of the stuff that's coming out soon and just looking at the list of kind of upcoming through the waiver wire and stuff like that. Uh, I noticed that Baby Steps still has a very high hype factor rating and a decently high publishing percentage. I don't think that game's going to score well. So people need to get out while they can. In
I
terms of
agree. I'm a Baby
value,
Steps hater. I
yeah.
I do not get that game. But yeah,
Yeah. In terms of value still out there, to me, Consumi still is probably the most likely to deliver a surprise this year. In terms of what's out that we know, right? I think that's one that, I see it relatively low down on last week's waiver wire. I don't think it's on a lot of people's radars unless you're really in the weeds of this thing. It's made an impression on those that have seen it, and I think there's a reason for that. So, you can never say 100%, but I think there's a decent case to be made.
I
Yeah,
agree. I think that Consume Me, if that's available as well, and you need something, I think
yeah,
that's a really good option. And those you happen to be in one of those leagues that for whatever reason Mina the Hollower is actually
yeah,
taken,
yeah,
and Luminous Arise is taken. Consume Me is
yeah.
a pretty good option.
I think Consumi is lower on people's radars list, and like I
Definitely.
said, in terms of value, Moonlighter 2 is still out there as well. I know that we've talked a lot about Moonlighter 2. It still doesn't have a date, but um, I still think it's coming this year and likely has some value attached to it. Just looking at what are some of the safer pickups. So we've kind of gone through them before. So,
Yeah, it's a lot of the
if you
same
need a
things
bigger,
we've said on previous episodes for sure.
yeah, especially the last two coming out of Summer Games Fest and doing the special episode on SGF and then talking to Kyle last time around. I think, there's a lot there if you're still looking to explore something to fill in the gaps on your team. So let's try and look ahead and see, Marcus, what the rest of this month and August has in terms of the game scores. Are you ready for some pixel prognostications?
Let's do it.
Pixel Prognostications.
This is the big one. Tales of the Shire, July 29th. Oh boy.
Did
It's
we
like a
not talk
70
about this
over
one?
and under.
Did we talk about this one last month with Kyle?
I know we've talked about it recently. I can't remember if it was last episode or the one before that, but
well,
it's,
I don't remember what I said. So let's do it again.
Cozy farming sim set in the Lord of the Rings world.
That's right. Maybe I don't remember what I said, but I feel like it's going to be around a 72. Let's say 72.
Okay. Slightly higher, I think 74. A game that I forgot was coming out in, in just a week's time and has just recently, this is stressing me out now. Oh my God. I need to finish some games before July 31st. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound is set to release on July 31st. I guess I have to go first on this. 85.
I'm gonna go 86. I think this looks really good.
Taking
really,
me over.
really good. Yeah.
Okay, now next up, a game that both of us are relying on to do well. Chained Echoes Ashes of Elrond has an August 7th release date.
Yeah.
I think you are up first.
I am up first. The base game, I'm pretty sure from memory it was an 89. So it came out a while ago now. I feel like this is going to be a meaty DLC. I feel like people are going to be happy about it. 87.
Oh, that's the number I was thinking about. Okay, alternatively to that, then I'm just going to say it hits where the base one was. So I'm going to say 89.
Okay.
Mafia the Old Country. Oh boy. Do I vote with my heart or my head? Okay. 79.
Okay. And what would you have said before we decided to cover 2K? Does it change or did it?
No, it's probably around the same. Truthfully, if I was taking into consideration everything we've talked about tonight, my prediction should be that this is lower than 79. 79 is quite high for that series.
It is.
I'm thinking that I'm hopeful that I score 79. I'm thinking that there's a chance, given the breakout in the new, like there's some new things that it's doing. Am I confident with this answer? No, I am not.
Well, I feel the same way, but I'm actually going to take the over, John. I'm going to go 80.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I think you just gave up a point there. Okay, good.
I do think it looks
really
really good, and maybe it's my that's a heart pick, but I'm a big, maybe as most people from kind of my generation are, but like a big fan of The Godfather, and I'm ready for a mafia style game set in Italy, and give it to me.
All right, next up, releasing on August 19th, Sword of the Sea.
I feel like this one might disappoint a little bit. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to go. I think people are adding this game because they feel like it's going to be in the mid 80s, and I feel like it's going to struggle to do that. So I'm going to say 79, John.
Good. I'll say 82.
Okay.
79 is what I had in my mind. That's why I'm laughing to myself. So, Dying Light the Beast, August 22nd. This is a game that we've both been famously low on. I guess I have to go first. 77.
Yeah, you're higher on it than I. I'll say 74.
I don't know. People keep talking about this game like they're excited for it. So I'm trying to incorporate that into the equation. I don't know. Gears of War Reloaded on August 26th. I know I mentioned I have this on one of my teams. So, Marcus, what do you think? I actually don't know how to judge this one, truthfully.
It's tough. I think there's such a novelty with it coming everywhere, right? Like coming to PlayStation, Gears of War on PlayStation. So such a wild thing to think of, only a few years ago.
Does that boost the zeitgeist a little bit for this game? Like,
I think it does. But the worry that I have is, yes, it's being updated, and I don't know if a reloaded, does that mean a remake or a remaster or what? But I played this game, obviously not the reloaded version, but what was it, just last year?
The most recent remaster that they did not too long ago, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it wasn't a new remaster. Like, I think it came out on Xbox One, but I played it just last year. But Ultimate Edition, I think it's called.
Ultimate Edition, yeah.
And it's maybe it's because I'm a PlayStation person, and Xbox never really appealed to me, or Xbox IP didn't appeal to me as much as PlayStation IP. I'm not sure, but it feels like an old game, and so I worry a little bit about that. We've talked about some of these remasters and remakes of older games. How much are they doing? Are they doing enough to appeal to kind of the modern sensibilities of today? So all that said, I think that the brand name, the IP, is probably enough to get it to an 80 by itself. So let's say 81.
I'm getting good at predicting where you're going to predict the scores.
Based
I'm
on
going to
what I
say
say.
84.
Okay.
Yeah, 84.
Yeah.
One, I'm just trying to differentiate between our scores a little bit, put some daylight between them. Yeah, because I'm always a little bit skeptical of the remakes or the remasters as well, especially this year. But yeah, I think some things will pull it up slightly. I don't think people are wanting to besmirch the original. I'm going to try and keep the narrative strong.
Yeah.
Next up, Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, August 28th. I have to go first. I have no idea. I don't remember what the original game got for this. Oh boy.
Yeah, I think it was I want to say it was in the 90s. It would have been pre-Open Critic, but it reviewed really well.
I think similarly, is the same thing gonna happen here? Yeah, they were all 90s, 91 on Metacritic. No. I'll say 86.
Okay. I was reflecting back as I was looking at this list, John. I've never played a Kojima game. Like never.
Oh, really?
Not a single one. And again, coming from primarily the PlayStation ecosystem, I suspect that's a bit of a sin. I don't know. Maybe because of that, I'm not as excited about a remake of a third game of a franchise that I've never played. So that maybe that's coloring this a little bit. But I think that people are expecting this game to do more than it will.
Yeah.
82.
Okay. Shinobi Art of Vengeance on August 29th. You're up first.
So I am invested in this game scoring well. I think it's on both of the teams that I mentioned at the top of the show as kind of in that I'm in a race with another person. So this is made by the folks that did the Streets of Rage 4 game. Similar art style to that game. I really like Streets of Rage 4. They also did a Wonder Boy Dragon's Trap remake previous to that, which is also excellent. Didn't score quite as well on Open Critic, I don't think. I'm quite high on Shinobi. I will say, what do you think I'm going to say? I'm going to say 86.
I don't know. I don't know this one.
I'm going to say 86.
That is high. That is not what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I'm lower on this because I just don't know enough about it. I'm going to say 82. I don't know. There's
86 is probably a little high. I wonder what I don't have what Streets of Rage 4 kind of.
It was in like an 80-45 range, I think.
Yeah,
but that's just going off of memory. So
yeah, that sounds right, actually.
The last one on this list is Lost Soul Aside, which also releases on August 29th. Now, you may remember that game was delayed from May out till August. And on our last episode, when we talked about this game, Marcus, you predicted that game would get a 74. And I predicted that game would get a 76. And Steve Fallon on that episode predicted it would get a 73. So, would you like to change your answer?
Well, if anything, 74. I think it might go lower. Honestly, if we talk about these delays usually helping a game, I don't know that it will in this case. I don't know. I haven't heard like anything about this game, so I don't know that that's a good thing. I don't know. I'll say 74. I think that's fine.
Yeah, same here. We'll just lock it in and see what happens.
Yeah.
All right. That's a lot of games. I'm telling you, like August, another month where, lots of things coming out, lots of great games to play. I'm shocked that you haven't played a Kojima game. You really need to play Death Stranding, Marcus. And Death Stranding too. So
that's what I hear.
Talk about that.
They're just too big.
Talk about that after.
Yeah, they're not tight. They're not tiny enough for me. Yeah,
they're not that big. You can drink your coffee through half of it. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's great. It's a good time. Okay. So that was Pixel Prognostications. We did have a question, which came over to us on Blue Sky. It was actually a question relating to drafting counter picks, but after the draft. So not at the draft, but after the draft. And the question was, what are your strategies when deciding on the post-draft counter? Do you wait as long as possible through the year to find a likely target? Or do you aim for games that you feel won't be released but have high risk scores, or target games that will be sub 80? Like, what are you doing in that regard, Marcus?
Yeah, it was funny. So it was I don't know if you said it was Louberry Keith on Blue Sky. Um, so I think that they hit on a strategy that I've never really put a lot of thought into. I think like oftentimes when leagues that I play in that require counter picks that take place after the draft, I usually try to fill it relatively soon. But I think that that's probably not the best way to go about it, because I've looked in a couple of leagues that I'm playing in this year that do have a late counter pick, and I think you're probably a lot more likely to be able to get a counter pick that you're certain, because people might, almost like check out a little bit in the leagues. You can kind of like pounce on that a bit and kind of lock a game that's been delayed that they still have sitting on their roster. You can counterpick that, and then you're basically guaranteed as year zero. There isn't really probably a lot of incentive to do that post-draft counter early at all. Like you could wait till at least the latter half of the year to do that, because it can be tough earlier in the year to try to identify games that are going to score poorly, because oftentimes those ones are not the ones that are on people's rosters right off the bat, right? And it's not something that I considered, but I think it probably means you're better off waiting to do that post-draft counter as late as you feel comfortable doing it. I think there's usually a deadline. I want to say kind of like late September, late October. I'm not sure what the default is for those post-draft counters. I've never gotten to it myself, so I've never really looked that closely into it, but probably waiting till as late as you feel comfortable to do that, because I think you'll end up having a lot more to choose from.
Can I throw something at you to build on that? So
Sure.
Truthfully, the leagues that I've been in haven't had them, and to my benefit, because I do think it's a lot harder when you have a post-draft counter. It really changes the complexion on how you're drafting, how you're picking up games off the waiver wire. Obviously, for me, it's a lot more about number of moves that you can make and your budget management. But if you have to also consider people counter picking your games, you're also giving that a lot more credence and thought before just like filling up your list of games soon after the draft is done. But one thing, as you were talking, and when this question came in, I think one thing you kind of hit on, Marcus, is the league composition has a massive effect on that, on how you go with this. To me, if you have a very small number of players and there's a lot of games to choose from, then going early might not be the worst thing, especially if you think there's something in there that you do want to lock in, because there's going to be a deeper pool of games to pull from. However, if you're playing in like a 12-team league and it's already slim pickings, the longer the season goes, I don't think it's going to get any deeper. So you might actually be worth it, to your point, waiting till people get desperate, because they're going to have to put some stuff to fill out a roster. And if it's already a large league, the number of games available are kind of dwindling, and they're just having to fill out roster spots. I think at the worst is to the point here is you might end up with a game that does go above 70, but maybe just by a bit. Like you're losing a couple points. It's like, again, risk mitigation rather than trying to choose if something's going to be pushed out and delayed out of the year. You're just trying to you're taking a small hit by doing that. So I do think the league composition plays a large part. Like knowing your competitors, it's almost like the poker element of it here. Like knowing your competitors, also to your point, Marcus, if they do have a lull in midsummer or they're not paying attention, like that is going to be way more important than either going sooner or later. So yeah, league composition, I think, plays a big part.
I think that's a fair point. I think that all things being equal, at least in the experience of the leagues that I've played in, I think that you're probably better to wait. But you're right. Like it's important to kind of know who you're playing with, what the kind of like how deep the rosters already are, all of those things you're having to kind of consider in this. But like, I think kind of like standard size leagues, kind of standard-ish rules, it probably benefits you to wait, I would say, more often than not. And it's not something that I'd ever done or really even considered all that much prior to Louberry Keith asking this question. So Thank you for that.
From Interesting. Yeah, thank you so much. We really wanted to incorporate it into the show because we thought it was a great question. And that's going to do it for us. That was Hype Factor episode 10. Marcus, if the listeners wanted to reach out to you, where could they find you?
So you can find me on Blue Sky at Marcus O'Neill 79. And as I did briefly mention, I do another podcast completely unrelated to fantasy called Tiny Game Chronicles, where me and my good friend Michael, we pick a tiny game, a game that takes about 5 hours or less to complete. And we do a little deep dive on that game. And with that podcast releases every other week. So if that sounds interesting, please go check that out.
And as for me, you can find me on Blue Sky at John32, also in various Discords. Hype Factor is also both on Blue Sky and X. You can find Hype Factor there. You can send us some questions, comments, which we'll incorporate into the episodes. And finally, if you have liked what you have heard so far from Marcus and I, please consider giving us a positive 5-star review on your podcast player of choice. It's always much appreciated. And just a quick shout out, we have gotten some very good positive feedback, both on our podcast players, but also on YouTube, where the shows are available as well. And appreciate all the comments and positive feedback. That's really nice and great to hear. So that's going to do it for us. Until next time, everyone, get hyped.
Remember, the information provided is for entertainment purposes only. Hype Factor does not guarantee the accuracy, completeness, or reliability of any advice or predictions offered. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that you are solely responsible for any decisions you make based on the information provided. We strongly encourage you to fantasy critic responsibly. And remember, this is just a game, and in no way impacts your status as a gamer. Hype Factor cannot be held responsible for any damages resulting from bad picks, drops, or overall Fs on your season.